On a rainy, stormy evening, millionaire Robert Hastings was on his way to the airport for a crucial business trip. His wife, Emily, was at home, bound to her wheelchair, left behind to battle her own inner demons. Just as Robert was about to make it out of the city, his gaze fell upon a destitute beggar woman standing by the roadside, soaked to the bone, clutching a crying baby. In a moment of spontaneous compassion, Robert did something out of character. He handed the woman the keys to his luxurious home, offering her sanctuary from the storm. What he didn't know was that the gesture of goodwill would set in motion a chain of events that would unravel his life in ways he couldn't imagine. Robert Hastings, a successful businessman in his early 40s, had built a multimillion-dollar empire from the ground up. He was known for his sharp business acumen, but not necessarily for his kindness. His life had been meticulously structured: meetings, conferences, and jet-setting around the world. Yet behind the sleek facade of success, Robert's personal life was falling apart. Emily, his wife, had once been the vibrant center of his world. She had been a talented dancer, full of life and grace, until a tragic accident left her paralyzed from the waist down. Since then, their relationship had grown distant. Emily was drowning in bitterness and sorrow, angry at her circumstances, while Robert buried himself in work, finding solace in financial success but feeling increasingly disconnected from the woman he once loved. As Robert prepared to leave for an important business trip overseas, he couldn't shake the feeling of guilt. He had grown accustomed to leaving Emily behind, but something gnawed at him that evening. Perhaps it was the relentless rain pounding on the windshield, or the distant echoes of an unspoken promise to always be there for her. As his car crawled through the traffic toward the airport, Robert noticed a beggar woman standing in the rain, a baby swaddled in her arms. Her face was gaunt, her clothes ragged, and the infant's wails cut through the heavy rain like a knife. For reasons he couldn't explain, Robert felt an overwhelming urge to help her. He stopped the car, rolled down the window, and gestured for her to come closer. "Here," he said, pressing the keys to his house into her trembling hands. "Take my home for the night. My wife is there, she'll help you. Use anything you need." The woman stared at him in disbelief, tears mixing with raindrops on her cheeks. I don't know how to thank you," she stammered. "Just go," Robert said, glancing at his watch. His flight was in 2 hours. Without thinking much of it, Robert drove off, assuming he'd done a good deed. He could not have known how much his life was about to change. Robert's business trip stretched longer than expected. An urgent deal required him to stay overseas for a week longer than planned, and though he called home every night, Emily never picked up the phone. He wasn't particularly worried. Emily had become withdrawn since the accident, and sometimes she didn't feel like talking. But on the flight back, a sense of dread crept up on him. When Robert finally returned home, nothing could have prepared him for what he found. The mansion was unrecognizable. The once pristine garden was overgrown with weeds, the curtains drawn, and an eerie stillness clung to the air. Robert walked into the house, his shoes sinking into damp, filthy carpets. The grand chandelier above the entrance was cracked, its crystals dangling like broken teeth. The walls were stained, and the scent of decay and neglect filled his nostrils. His heart raced. Where was Emily? "Emily," he called out, his voice echoing through the desolate halls. There was no response. He rushed to their bedroom and found the bed unmade, the sheets stained. It was clear that Emily had been confined to her wheelchair for days without any help. Panicking, Robert checked the rest of the house, calling out for his wife and the beggar woman. Finally, he heard a noise, soft, faint, coming from the far corner of the house, near Emily's studio where she used to practice her dancing. He opened the door and froze in horror. The beggar woman stood there, dressed in one of Emily's elegant gowns, her hair neatly styled, holding Emily's jewelry in her hands. The baby, now looking healthier, sat on a blanket in the corner, playing with expensive toys. But that wasn't what made Robert's blood run cold. Emily sat slumped in her wheelchair, her wrists tied to the armrests with pieces of torn fabric, her face bruised and gaunt, her eyes filled with a mixture of rage and despair. She tried to speak, but her voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. "What have you done?" Robert gasped, his mind unable to process the scene in front of him. The beggar woman turned, her eyes devoid of the gratitude and vulnerability she had shown in the rain. Instead, they were cold and calculating. "I made your house my own," she said softly, a smile creeping onto her lips. "Just like you offered. You were supposed to stay for the night." Robert shouted, fury rising in his chest. The woman laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the room. "Oh, you think I was going to leave after a night in paradise? Look at me, this is the life I deserve, and she pointed at Emily with disdain, couldn't stop me." Robert rushed toward Emily, untying her wrists, but the damage had already been done. Emily looked frail, her spirit broken by days of abuse. Robert cradled her face, tears filling his eyes. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, overwhelmed by guilt. Emily's voice trembled as she spoke. "You left me here, with her." The police were called, and the beggar woman was arrested, but the damage she had caused was irreparable. As the days passed, Robert tried to mend the wounds, both physical and emotional, that had been inflicted on Emily. But the trust between them had been shattered. The beggar woman's presence had not only destroyed their home, but she had also laid bare the cracks in their marriage that neither of them had been willing to face. Emily grew quieter, retreating further into herself. Robert, haunted by his decision, began to see the depth of his neglect. He had left his wife vulnerable, both to the beggar's cruelty and to the isolation that had consumed her long before. Weeks later, as they sat in the dimly lit living room, Robert turned to Emily, his voice heavy with regret. "I thought I was helping someone," he said. "I thought I was doing something good." Emily, her voice now barely above a whisper, replied, "You thought you were saving someone else, but you forgot to save me." The words cut deep, and for the first time in years, Robert realized the full extent of his failures, not as a businessman, but as a husband. The tragedy of the beggar woman's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also forced Robert to confront the reality he had been avoiding for too long. He had built a life of wealth and success, but he had abandoned the most important person in it. From that day forward, Robert vowed to be there for Emily, not just in body, but in heart and mind. He sought professional care for her, helping her regain some semblance of independence, and for the first time in years, he began to prioritize her needs over his work. The road to healing was long and painful. Their marriage would never be what it once was, but in the wreckage of their past, they found a way to move forward, slowly, carefully, and with a new understanding of what it meant to truly care for someone. As for the beggar woman, she disappeared into the shadows, her presence a ghostly reminder of the night Robert had tried to change someone else's life, only to destroy his own in the process. The end.